Okay, so today we're going to cook spaghetti. This is my spaghetti approach, or as I like to say, Spaghetti 101, or any other name you want to give it. So what have we got for basic ingredients? I'm going with 2 cans of tomato paste. Just decent quality tomato paste works. I happened to get some today that had garlic flavour in it, so that's good. Bit of a shortcut, don't need to cut up garlic and put in it. And I also go with 2 cans of crushed tomatoes. You could go with uncrushed tomatoes, but being a bit lazy, easier to do crushed tomatoes, saves me one step. And the ones I got today happen to have some Italian spice in. You could do it with or without. If you do it without, you might want to add some spices. This way they're basically in there and the blend's not too bad. And some mince. You can have any grade of mince you want. I happen to find some lean ground beef today. Looks like nice meat, so we're going to fry that up, and then for later on when it actually comes time to the spaghetti, I got 2 packets of spaghetti. What I was going for was about 900 grams. These packets happen to be 450 grams a piece. So my ingredients is pretty simple right now. A couple of cans of tomato paste, a couple of cans of diced, or I said crushed earlier, but diced tomatoes, bit of flavouring, some meat, got the spaghetti for later on. Sometimes when I'm cooking up the mince, I might fry a little bit of onion first and then cook the mince. Today I'm not going to bother doing that, but if you do it, then that's not a bad way to sort of, it helps just break up and crumble up the mince. But I've got not a bad technique for that, so we'll capture a bit of video on that as we move along, and you'll see how I crumble the mince. It's pretty important to get your mince nicely crumbled. And in addition to this, we're going to add some brown sugar, some vinegar, some wine, a bit of pepper and salt. But as we go along, I'll show you how much I do of that. Okay, so now we're getting ready to start working on the meat. So got a stainless steel pan. I always like to use a nice big pan. Nothing worse than a pot that's too small for the sauce that you're going to make. So if you've got a big pot, use it. And you can see I've got the stove on. I don't know if you can see that or not, but the stove's on there somewhere. And I put a decent heat, but I'm going to stay at it so I don't have any problems. There's my mince ready. Remember, when you're handling fresh mince, or fresh meat anyway, after you finish, make sure you wash your hands pretty good. Good safety tip. And I'm going to put some oil in. So here we go with the oil. How much oil do I put in? I don't know. Just a splash of oil like that. Just enough to get it going. Then I'm going to pop the mince in on top of that, so you can see now the mince is in there. And then the next thing I'm going to do is I got my trusty old spoon, and I'm just going to break it up. Let's move it around to make sure that the mince has got oil on it, and you can hear it starting to cook. And I just use this spoon, and basically I just work away and just sort of keep separating it, and keep the temperature moderate, not too hot. You don't want it to burn, but you want it to cook fairly well. And just keep moving it, and it's going to crumble up, but we'll come back and I'll show you how it crumbles up in a bit. I'm not sure how well you can see down in the pan there, but I got the mince sort of working away, cooking, and I just keep working away and crumbling it up. And next time you come back, you'll see it nicely crumble. What I'm going for is pretty well cooked meat here. I don't want the meat to be raw, actually cooked enough so that if you ate it, not that you would, but if you ate it, it's fully cooked meat. Okay, just showing you a bit more of the mince cooking process. So it's not fully crumbled yet, but you can maybe able to see that I got it nicely spread out there, and I just sort of keep working away like that, just to make sure I get it nicely crumbled. What you don't want is just sort of clumps of mince all together. So by doing this, it sort of breaks it up really nicely, and it helps make the sauce good. Okay, so the mince is ready to go. It's nicely cooked and crumbled, so that'll actually be safe meat to cook. So I'm just going to take that off the heat for a little bit while I get the other ingredients ready. So back over to our other ingredients. So while you were away, I took the tops off things, and what I'm going to do, so I've got my two chopped tomatoes there, so I use that just to mix it in. So I'm going to put some brown sugar in. I don't know, that's a big heaping teaspoon. I'm going to put a couple of those in there, in that one, and then I'm going to add a bit of white vinegar. I don't know how much, about that much. I don't know what that was, maybe a couple of tablespoons at the most. And then you need a bit of salt, so grabbing another dry spoon. I don't know, about that much salt. Now you don't need too much salt in this because I'm using pre-processed tomatoes. There's actually probably a decent amount of salt in anyway, but you can always add a bit of salt later for taste. And I always like to put a bit of pepper in, so I'm going to do that now. I'm just sprinkling it, I don't know, 1/4 teaspoon, let's call it that. And that's all going to go in the pot. And then the other thing I've got, so when you go in, that just is a little bit drier than you want it to be through the cooking, because we're going to cook for a fair while. So I add some red wine to it. I don't know how much red wine's in there. Probably a couple of good mouthfuls. Say 3 mouthfuls of red wine, but whatever amount you want. And we want the sauce a little bit runny, not too runny, but just a little bit easy to mix. I'll show you that when I get along, and that way you might be able to guess how much red wine. So if I set the glass down, it probably comes to about there on the cup. Now if you're too young and don't have red wine, or you don't want to use wine, that's okay. You can use a bit of water or a bit of tomato juice or something like that, but you need a little bit of extra liquid. So we're going to start assembling this now. So I'll get my first one, and I'm going to put my pot back on the heat. I took it off the heat there for a minute because I didn't want that to go. This is pretty tough work assembling. Look, I'm going to pour that in. That's in there. And we'll grab this one. Remember, this one had the sugar and the vinegar in it. I think I put the salt in that one as well, so pour that one in. And I'm going to save the red wine till last. I'll come back and show you that, but now I'm going to put the tomato paste in. Don't need to show you that, but trust me, I'm going to put both of those of tomato paste in. Just happen to need 2 hands. Okay, so I've got all the ingredients mixed in there and just mixing them all up. Actually, don't have the wine in there yet. So you can see that's got a fair bit of liquid in there, but I'm going to add the wine in anyway, just to make it a bit liquidy. This is actually going to cook for a couple of hours, so during that time it's going to give up a little bit of the liquid, and it's going to end up into a really nice consistency. And I happen to have a lid, I don't know if you can see it, it's got a little hole in it which lets a bit of the steam out, which means a bit of the moisture escapes. So you can do that, or you can just put a lid on it and boil it slowly, simmer it, or you can take the lid a little bit off so you lose a little bit of the moisture, but you don't want to lose too much. But we'll see how we get along. So as I said, it's going to cook away for, let's say, 2 hours. Okay, so here we are, I don't know, an hour and a half later. You can see that we've got a nice sauce happening there. I'm going to give it a stir and have a taste. Now's a good time to have a taste, because I'm going to cook it for about another 45 minutes, so if I need to adjust it with a bit of salt or whatever, now's not a bad time. You can sort of see the light simmer I got going on there. That's about the sort of pace I have it go at. So let's give it a stir and see what it looks like. A bit hard to tell there, I know, but not a bad sort of liquid, and it's going to run really nice onto the spaghetti when I do it later. Okay, so I've lifted a little bit for the taste test. Just a little trick on the taste. So actually I lifted this probably about 2 minutes ago. Let it cool down a bit. Don't taste it when it's super hot, because you'll end up just burning your tongue and you won't have an idea of what it tastes like. I find if you just let it cool a bit, so it's a more natural eating temperature, you actually get a better feel for the taste. So here we go, let's see what we think. I'm telling you, that's one of the nicest sauces that I've made, certainly the best one I've made today. and maybe one of the better ones I've made. So I don't think it needs any salt or any other bits and pieces added to it, so I'm just going to let it simmer away. Probably the best part of an hour, and about an hour I'm going to put the pasta on, and at that time I'll just turn it off and be ready to eat. So when we're getting ready to combine it with the pasta, actually I'll give a few hints on how I go about cooking the pasta as well, and be back in a moment. Okay, so we're just about ready to start the pasta. You can see I got a nice big pot of water there. Key to cooking pasta, as I said, we're doing 900 grams, is to have lots of water. And when the water comes to the boil, actually I'm going to pour a little bit of oil on top. That helps, that stops the pasta from frothing up and boiling over while it's cooking. But I'm also going to stir it a fair bit. So we'll put that on now and we'll get it going. Remember, a nice big pot, lots of water, so that your pasta can bubble around quite nicely. Okay, so we've got the pot on, so let's see what's going on here. Oh, we've got a good rolling boil going, which is exactly what we need. And now I'm going to put that, remember I mentioned that I'm going to put a bit of oil in, and just a splash of oil, doesn't take much. Not exactly sure how much I put in there, just a little bit. And now the pasta, pour first thing of pasta in, don't worry that it's all sticking up like that. And stick the next bit of pasta in. And then the key here is just slowly to work it in. You might notice I got a wooden spoon. You can use anything. And you're just basically trying to gently work it down into your boiling water, separating at the bottom, and after a few seconds you'll get it down. And most pastas seem to take about 12 to 15 minutes to cook. They say different things on the pack, but I find they all take about that long. So once I get it down there, it'll come back to a rolling boil again, and I just keep stirring occasionally with my wooden stick throughout the whole cycle. And in a few minutes we'll come back and test if it's cooked. But remember, always stick with it the whole time. You don't want it to clump up, you want it to be nice and separated. Okay, so the pasta's just about ready. You can see there, it's working nice on the fork. And you have to figure out when it's cooked for yourself. I can't help you with that, other than it's just chewy and doesn't taste floury or hard in the middle. And it's not so soft that it's fallen apart. And over here I got some Parmesan cheese that I grated. Got a little fancy dancy cheese grater, but you can buy it already pre-grated, whatever you want. And there's the pasta. Remember I said it needs to be a bit liquidy? Look at that. That's just going to pour beautiful over the pasta. So that's ready to go. And remember, you need a colander to drain the pasta in, so we're going to do that in a second. Okay, just ready to assemble the pasta. Got the bowl, the pasta lifter, and scoop it up just like that. Put however much you want in the bowl. If you find the pasta's a little too sticky, you can rinse it in nice hot water if you want. This is not too bad. And then we'll get our pasta sauce here, drizzle it over. Remember I said have it a bit liquidy, and it runs down into it quite nicely. And look at that, maybe even just put a little bit more on that one. Grab that cheese that we grated, put that across, and there you go, Pasta 101.